Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. The construction sector in Australia, particularly residential construction, not just provides houses for millions of Australians, but also provides tens of thousands of jobs for both skilled and low-skilled workers, as well as providing significantly to economic growth. But for the past couple of years, all we seem to hear about it is that there aren't enough homes being built. On top of that, advice leaked from Treasury yesterday shows that the federal government's goal of 1.2 million homes over the next 5 years is unlikely to be achieved. To help me understand where the sector's up to and what it needs from government and others, I welcome Jocelyn Martin, Managing Director of HIA. Jocelyn, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thanks, Sean.
It's just over a year. I think the 1st of July was the anniversary from when the government committed to build 1.2 million homes under the National Housing Accord. What's happened since?
Yeah, well, I mean, simple maths is 250,000 homes a year, and we're well short of that. I think in the last 12 months, we've built just under 170,000 homes. So we're not on track to build 1.2 million homes at all. And obviously, every year we don't do that increases the target for the years to come. So, what has happened since? Well, essentially nothing. We're still working on improvements to barriers to housing supply, skills shortages, you name it, those barriers still exist. So we've got a lot of work to do if we actually are going to even come close.
Okay, I want to go through some of those issues because we kind of bandy them around without maybe understanding them. Let's start with land supply. And given we're such a big nation, is the problem that the land supply in the places people want to live, there's not much there and probably too much outside that? What is the land supply issue?
Well, I think many of our builders will say that that's actually the heart of the issue is available land. It takes a long time for greenfield land to come online. The approval process is very lengthy. The delivery of the infrastructure, the sewer, the water, the power that is needed to put homes there is actually fraught with a range of different approvals. You're relying heavily on organisations such as Sydney Water to actually deliver that infrastructure in a timely way. And so, a lot of the problems start with the availability of land and the speed at which that land can come to market.
Are we being reasonable when we complain about it? Like, is it sort of inefficient? You mentioned Sydney Water, but all cities have the same infrastructure requirements. Is it just hard to do? Or are some places better than others when it comes to electricity, gas, water, etc.?
Yeah. Look, I don't think it's easy to do, but I think it actually could be, much, much more streamlined. I mean, at the moment, a lot of the approvals are kind of sequential. So, for instance, you can apply for an address, if you like, on a subdivision. You have to wait for that land to be ready to do that. You could actually put in a DA and concurrently with the land being developed, which would already speed things up. So are there any states doing better than others? Look, overall, I think South Australia has actually managed to make some improvements to their planning system in order to bring land online much quicker. But certainly in areas such as New South Wales and Victoria, very little improvement at this stage.
What about local planning rules and building codes? Everyone complains about those as well. Are they still a major issue?
Well, there was a very significant release of the National Construction Code. It was NCC 2022, although I think it really hasn't been released in a couple of states, like South Australia have put a freeze on it, for instance. But it was a significant release that included a lot of measures around climate and also around accessibility. And so I think that was definitely a huge impost on the industry. It actually was it's a very complicated document now. It is actually very hard for a lot of builders to actually know whether they're doing the right thing. And it has added a lot of complexity to the building process. And it's also probably reduced the amount of consumer choice that's available too. So for instance, things that you can't build on particular blocks, with certain orientations. You can't have the size home that you necessarily want or the layout of the bathroom exactly how you would like it because of those changes. And so our reckoning is that it's probably added up to 30 or 40,000 to the cost of a new home through those changes to the NCC. The other issue, I guess, is that it is part of the red tape and the compliance that the builder has to make. And there's a lot of stakeholders that are influencing the National Construction Code. And I think in some ways it's lost its way. It's actually no longer a Bible for how to build a home. It's actually the answer to climate change, the answer to accessibility, the answer to insurance. And it's trying to be all things to all people. And I think that has meant that it's ended up being much, much more complex. And indeed, many of the things that are coming in with it are actually now, diminishing. There's diminishing returns to a lot of those changes now. It's just not financially viable to introduce those changes.
Stay with me, Jocelyn. We'll be back in a minute. I'm speaking to Jocelyn Martin, Managing Director of HIA. Before the break, we were talking more about red tape. What about things like skills shortages? Is it still an issue in Australia?
So if we were to build the 1.2 million homes, that is the target that the government have set, and indeed is probably the amount of homes that we need before we actually impact affordability. Our estimation is that we need about 83,000 people right now, additional to what we have in the industry. And that's across all trades, mainly carpenters, bricklayers, electricians and plumbers, but still across all trades and in all states. So it's at the moment where they're not building enough homes, say in Victoria, for instance, we are seeing our volume builders sort of meet the needs of the current climate. And so they're actually reducing their need for trades. So if you looked at it now, it wouldn't look like we had a skills shortage in some areas. But in actual fact, if we were to actually be building at the volume that we need, we would be, way short of our skilled labour. And as we saw during COVID, that caused delays because there just wasn't that available trades, and that increased costs for people too.
Yeah. What about the cost of delivering a new home? So we talk about productivity, and the government is big on productivity. I'm sure cutting red tape would improve productivity, but is there a role for the industry itself to be more productive in how it builds homes?
Yeah, so the government have obviously come back to this term talking about productivity, as though productivity is a new buzzword, definitely. And I think in talking to the Housing Minister, Claire O'Neil, she would say that productivity in our sector obviously is related to the barriers planning and the construction code, but also, having not enough skilled labour. But also the fact that the industry doesn't typically innovate as much as maybe it could. I probably challenge that thinking. There's a lot of talk around the fact that we still build the same way we have for 60 years ago, whereas I see a lot of improvements in the way that we build our homes and the speed at which they can bring them to market. And a lot of the innovation has also happened at the design end as well. And so I think that the industry still has a lot of work to do in that area to be more innovative and to drive innovation. But I also think that if an industry itself is not as profitable as it could be, you're unlikely to get that reinvestment that you need. I also think that the industry probably has to be a better employer, particularly in terms of attracting women. I mean, if we actually only employ 50% of the available work, or attract 50% of the available workforce, then we're actually always going to have a skills shortage. And, it is a challenge because we compete with industries that can offer working from home options, more flexible work in terms of childcare and so forth. And we've got to be alive to that and actually offer, try and figure out what our value proposition to female workforce is. And I think that's on us too, as much as it is on the government to kind of do promotional programs and so forth. I think the industry itself has to kind of think how it can actually improve itself as an employer for women in the industry.
The other party in all this, outside the industry and government, of course, is the financiers, the banks. And I mean, I have builder friends who are always complaining that banks won't actually allow them to take out an overdraft to fund the building they're doing. Is it getting any better? I mean, I know some of the rules are set by the regulator, APRA, and it does make it difficult for the banks. And I don't want to bank bash here, but are the banks playing their role looking after builders?
Look, I think that it is interesting to me that a builder, when you think about it, underwrites the whole entire project from start to finish, and the buck stops with them essentially. So when we see situations like COVID where build times extended, it became very, very obvious who was holding the biggest risk. And things like progress payments and the speed at which progress payments, at the moment, I think that model is still very, very old-fashioned. It requires a lot of manual checking and a lot of delays, quite frankly, by the bank in terms of providing that cash flow, whereas the builder, on the other hand, has seen the suppliers shorten their terms. So they're actually now trying to meet shorter terms from their suppliers, but at the same time still having that cash flow, the pace of that cash flow go according to how it has been for a long, long time. So I think the banks probably have a role to play in kind of thinking about how they could modernise that side of things and adjust to kind of have some sort of better flow, because I do think the builders are holding the entire risk, and that became very obvious during COVID. The second that everything took a lot longer, it was the builder that was actually the only one that was exposed during that process. And I mean, the consumer ultimately, obviously, because they were left with a half-built home in some cases, but, it was basically the entire risk through that process was on the builder. I also think that in terms of assessing, mortgage capacity, the banks have got a very comfortable 3% buffer. That means that first home buyers, of course, are being assessed at a much higher rate than what they actually may ever need to meet, or at least in the short term. And I think that reassessing that buffer would be something that I think the banks should probably consider as well.
Jocelyn, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
No problem. Thanks, Sean.
That was Jocelyn Martin, Managing Director of HIA. This is the Fear and Greed Business Interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.